This is one of those movies where I have very little notes.
You probably won't eat them. There's a lot. This will bring up a lot of discussion.
Yeah, I could.
Yeah.
Primarily Critical.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Primarily Critical Movies and After Party. This would be it.
If you have not seen this film, we suggest that you do so before watching any further.
Because we've got spoilers, trivia, and opinions like crazy, and we cannot wait to share them.
Good, bad, new, weirdo, gross.
We will pass judgment on them all.
Today, however racist you are right now, be less. My name is Steve. I'm here with
Phil.
And
John.
We're talking about Selma.
Yes.
Hey, didn't we talk about trying to pick less and
Lighter movies?
a lighter movie?
You shut your face.
Yeah, exactly. In your face.
Yeah.
We're gonna go even beyond what you didn't want.
That's
Yeah,
okay.
this is not a light movie, that's for sure.
Oh, this
Definitely
is
not.
powerful movie of American history.
Yeah.
Yeah, like pivotal stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like how we see North America, our neighbor, and how things shaped going forward. Absolute must see for anyone that's ignorant, I would say.
Well, I kind of wish I've never done this, but I wish I had watched Malcolm X and watched Selma in like the same night.
Wow.
So you could compare the different strategies of two civil rights leaders, up close and personal. You can sort of get the story of both, because obviously Martin Luther King was much more effective. He actually got the laws changed and made things happen, right? And so I would like to see those direct comparisons, because it seemed to me that Martin Luther King, he was very effective and very smart. He had figured out what's going to work and what's not going to work, and the passive protest, that was essential, because the moment they did anything to anyone, that's what the news is going to focus. If there's any violence from a black person, that was the one and only story that anyone was going to care about,
That I made a note of that exact point you brought up, John, is that could you imagine this happening before TV and radio? It was the power of TV and radio and press that got the spotlight finally. How ridiculously awful Georgia, Selma, the politics of the time, and it's just awful. I mean, the people had to finally witness people being beat and killed until they gave a damn.
But they didn't get it. They didn't get it. I mean, the people that weren't racist were living in this bubble of denial, and the people that were racist didn't care.
But they had to be shocked into, because let's face it, a lot of the scenes they depict are very shocking, and it needs to be. I thought going into this movie it's going to be a PG soft, maybe soft, and it wasn't. I mean, the scenes of violence and the atrocities are as they should be, and people need to look at this movie and see what a tragedy to lose Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. What a blessing to the world. I'm not a very religious guy, but and a lot of religion, but religion was very important for this movement, and I respect that, because I don't think you get it done unless you have someone like him to motivate and keep this working. And that was the difference between Malcolm X. I guess he wanted to be extreme, and Martin didn't. He wanted to be peaceful. So
and you saw the dilemma the president with Johnson there was facing, is that he wasn't a militant, right? And so you have to work with him because he's not a militant. You can't vilify him. You can't vilify a guy that's not doing anything that's vilifiable. So you can't ignore him.
Martin Luther King, right? You had to be peaceful. They all had to toe the line in an impossible situation, which, if we're to believe it, is just unbelievable.
Yeah. I mean, if they could have vilified Martin Luther King, they would have. That's what they would have. Yeah. I mean, but they just couldn't, because he was a good man. At the end of the day, he's a religious man, which is something that was very important at the time to the American people.
All they could really get on him was, they alluded to, he wasn't faithful to his wife. Did you get that?
I did. I got that.
They alluded that to a few times in different ways. Yeah.
Oh, but who among us hasn't? The freaking president, Bill Clinton, the most powerful man in the future from that era. Like, I mean, come on. So we all have sin, but wow. What a powerful person to motivate that kind of a movement. And yeah.
So here's a question I have for you guys. So he's doing the march that over the bridge there,
right?
And when the second march, when the police went over the way, he kneels down to what we assume is to pray, and he decides to call off the march. Now, history would say this. I mean, obviously, everything worked out in his favor. But what do you think was the thinking behind that? Like, what's your guys' take on that? Why?
If Steve, go ahead.
My impression was that he thought it wasn't strategic. They were going to be cut off from their supplies, and he saw inevitable violence. And so he's like, this is going to turn into a big fight, and I can feel it in my bones. But he would say, he had the voice of God. But
I think it was a wise decision, because ultimately what he needed was the president of the freaking free world to back him, and finally bring in the military to make it a peaceful protest, which it should have been. But he had to make a judgment call, and if we were to believe what he said in the movie, he thought that a lot of people would, meet a violent end.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's true, and we've seen this in history since. Is that when you have a group of people that are riled up for a cause, but you don't have a defined end game, and you're in a protest, it's almost inevitable that destruction, violence, because you don't have something, somewhere to lead them to. It's like if it's like protesters are emotionally driven, really pumped up for their cause, and if you walk that right into town there, what is the end? What would have been the end game there? He's allowed to do the march, but where does that? What march to where? The courthouse to what? And then what?
Yeah, it was very compelling stuff. All of it's very compelling stuff. Like to understand the history of it, and what really hits is when they show like actual footage and all of that. Like, very gripping stuff.
It's gripping for sure.
Like, what a wonderful cast. Oprah's in it.
Oprah's there, yeah. Cuba Gooding Jr.
Yeah, I mean, it looked like the who's who of who gave a shit to be in that movie. Good on them. Like, even, like, I gotta pull up the notes there. Roth, the actor that had to play that shit bag of a governor.
Tim Roth.
Yeah. What a shitty role, but he did the job.
Yeah, he nailed it. Wow.
Someone's gotta be the evil piece of shit in the movie. Okay, guys, I gotta bring up this one. I didn't have usually I have good notes, but I didn't this time. But there's one scene that's the president, Lyndon Johnson, right? He's having a conversation in his Oval Office with said piece of shit governor from Alabama.
Right.
He says the word,
the N-word.
Why don't you let them N-word vote? Like he's appealing. And do you think at the time Lyndon Johnson was trying to like play at his level to coax out some of them, or was he a racist that was just trying to keep the peace?
Well, my take on that is that was an acceptable, unfortunate, but acceptable language amongst white people of the day. I mean, they sold candies called N babies in the store to children, so I think it was possible for a white person that day to use that word and not think of themselves as a racist.
Well,
in this day and age, that sounds absurd. Yeah, but at that time, I think that was very possible. I think that was, and to your point, he is a politician, and he might have just thought, well, by using that word, I'm appealing to him. But yeah, it's not good. I mean, it didn't look good.
No, but I think
we could think about our grandparents and some of the things that came out of their mouths, and it's just, it was a different era, right? And languages evolve and it change, right?
Well, so ultimately, to his credit, President Johnson, he did have a stirring speech at the end of the movie, which he finally gave his backing to the protest, and he said, "This is what's going to happen," and he said it in front of the country, and they all took notice, and was like, finally, the right thing from him. So unlike a lot of presidents that came after him,
George Wallace. Tim Roth is playing a guy named George Wallace, right?
George Wallace, right?
That's right. Yeah.
I mean, the acting. Here's another thing that really surprised me. A lot of the actors in the pivotal roles are not Americans, which is so neat. Like,
who's Tim Roth? What is
Tim Roth? Is an English guy, I believe, or is someone from the UK, and so is the lead, Martin Luther King. He's and I believe the guy that played Johnson was the same. He's an English guy. So I don't know. Side trivia.
Tom Wilkinson.
Yeah,
I have no idea. I have no idea where these people came from originally.
Well, and what year did this come out? This wasn't when the BLM was. It was before all that.
No, it's
right?
2014.
2014.
Okay, 2014. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I would imagine if this had come out, I don't know where obviously there's still lots of civil rights movements for black people in the United States. And so depending at the time, I mean, can you imagine you're trying to cast a movie like this during the Black Lives Matter at the peak of that? I can imagine no Americans would want to get involved in a movie so controversial at that time. Not that this is really it's more historical, but still. America's got it's an ugly place with civil rights in many ways, right? And so it might be, depending on the climate of America at the time, you might have a better chance of attracting non-American actors to this.
Man,
who knows what the casting situation was, but it's a brilliantly acted movie. I think it's so good, like so powerful. One of the most powerful movies. It really just gets to it, right? And it doesn't shy away from the graphic and horrible things enough that, it means business. Try to get you to realize the history of America in that time and what the movement is. And we all have our.
I mean, it's unbelievable. Like, you hear this, there's this moment, this scene where they're talking about what is the most important issue. And there's a couple things come up, and then it comes down to that you need to be vouched for by a registered voter before a black person can vote. And you go like, oh, holy cow. Like, to think about that is to try to put that under the guise that this is a democracy in which every citizen can vote, but that's how the system is working at the time.
Well, it was rigged. I mean, gosh,
that's not a democracy. I mean, that's just blatantly not a democracy.
Not at all, because they're desperately holding on to white power at that time.
Yeah.
There's no other way to say it. The people that had power in Alabama, and let's just focus on Alabama. They were just like trying to obstruct and stop it. And if it's continuing to this day, it's just awful.
Yeah.
Well, it kind of is.
we just went through.
They're playing around a lot with that, those voting laws today.
Well, it's horrible because, like in the movie, they talk about amongst Martin Luther and one of his supporters. They're talking about how if you don't have the vote, you can't get the right people elected, the judges, and on to get justice in the law courts. You can't get jobs if you can't get it, the right to go to the schools, and on and on. They keep the people down, keep them like slaves again, even though they've been emancipated for how long to that point. And you can see the frustration to finally push. The cool thing about the movie to me was the depiction of Martin Luther King having a direct line to the president of the United States and calling him up and trying to negotiate. And he had the ear of the president.
Yeah, and you had to admire the courage and balls he had to be talking to the president of the United States and taking a hard line with him. He went soft with him at first. He gave him a chance.
Yeah.
When the president blew the chance, he took a hard line with him, and he said, "No, like this is you either going to address this, or we're going full forward with our plans of a protest." He gave him fair warning, and and he knew that he was going to get on the front page news. And throughout the movie, the president keeps looking on. Damn, bad press for the president. Well, it worked, right? The pressure was on. The world started to look at Americans and say, democracy my ass. Yeah. Ridiculous. The right to vote. I mean, this is, you look at this and you look at like the civil rights movements today are so much more complicated, but that is so basic. I mean, call this a democracy, and there's a huge segment of people that can't vote. That is a basic principle of democracy. And so you have, I mean, that's right in the friggin' Constitution, right? So, no kid, unbelievable. Like how they even call themselves the land of the free at the time is ridiculous.
We're all guilty of something. We are not without sin in Canada. We can look at the Americans and say, well, they didn't allow women to vote to a certain point, so too in Canada. Like it's only recently the vote is so important to a democracy. You got to have free elections. You got to have coverage. You got to make it transparent. And what bullshit we went through with the previous clown ass president, I won't even say his name, is such a dismal thing to witness.
What, you mean the mango in chief?
Well, whatever you want, clown ass. But you talk about like dragging America down, and from a Canadian perspective. And Johnson, hopefully, he pulled it out of the fire at the time. President Johnson, I guess. But all these poor people, like, and they say in the movie, Martin Luther, Robert the Kennedys, all assassinated. Malcolm X. It's just awful period for the Americans.
Yeah.
The 60s were just terrible. Like, I don't know what to say about it. I said it. I know what to say about it. It was just, hopefully, never repeat that crap. Like,
well, you
got a lot of
work we learn. Yeah, we do. You do. I think, it's we're in a time too where our democracy seems to be threatened in a way. I think It's fragile. Yeah. And I think it's so important that everybody's voice is heard. I don't like, as whether you love Donald Trump or hate him, you should not have censored him on Twitter, should not have censored people on Facebook. You have to allow everybody to have the freedom of speech and the freedom of expression. And this is of the basic principles of a civil society. You know, that may lead to lots of discord. That may lead to lots of controversy. That may lead, but we're holding freedom above everything, freedom of every single person, right? And when you start doing that to one person, one day that's could be you, you know? And so while we might all think Donald Trump, take his voice away. Well, okay, but we're now setting the bar saying that we want to live in a society where it's okay to take certain voices away. And one day that may turn against you, you know? And so these freedoms, these are of utmost importance. And that's how I feel about that stuff. And so, I just, think it's worth putting that out.
I agree. I agree too. And even though it's so hateful, but the companies that censored them have the rights to shut them down because they own the rights to do it. As I
know.
understand.
I mean, that's a whole nother discussion about why are corporate regimes running things instead of the people.
Which is a scary thing going down the road. But here's the thing. You also hear talk about why didn't someone assassinate him? Why didn't someone take him out? I won't even say his name. You know what I'm talking about. The mango. What did you say? Anyways, no, you do not do what they did in the 60s. Try to take out every leader to squash movements and equality. You do not.
It gives the movement more power. In the end, I think these assassinations just give them more power. It makes people more outraged and
martyrs. But in a democracy, you do what you vote for your guy, or gal. If they win or lose, you get a term. It's not a dictatorship. You deal with it. And we had to go through 4 years of that piece of shit president, and we did it. And nobody killed him. And here we go. Hopefully things get better, but that's not the answer. Killing off your leaders.
No.
I mean, that's what's so infuriating about that period of time. And in historical sense, they lost a lot of good people.
Yeah, it's true.
Can you imagine if Martin Luther King lived to keep going? There was talk, I read more about him. He wanted to go into like shutting down the Vietnam War. He wanted to go for poverty issues, but we'll never know.
It was all cut short. Well, let's get into this these trivia points on the movie Selma. Tim Roth grew up in the civil rights era. He said he remembers George Wallace and thought of him as a monster and was amazed at the things that were coming out of this guy's mouth. I didn't know Tim Roth was that old, but I guess it wasn't that long ago, honestly, you know.
Yeah, sadly, it wasn't that long ago. 65.
Oh, he's 65? Wow.
Oh, 1965.
1965.
Oh.
Yeah.
Gee. All right. I lost my freaking notes here, guys.
Well, I'll take the next one here.
Okay, I'm digging from.
David, oh boy, how do you say that?
Iolo?
Iololos?
Oh, wow. We're good at
David Iololo's last scene to be filmed was the Nobel Peace Prize acceptance speech. He immediately broke down in tears after wrapping up the scene, to enthusiastic applause from extras and crew.
He did a great job.
Yeah, he did an amazing job.
Yeah.
Well, that you know what? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, isn't that fitting that that was the scene? Like that Nobel Peace Prize said to the world, "This guy is a good dude trying to be peaceful." Trying to get things done. It set the tone for his ability to have that connection, I guess, to the president, direct line. People took him seriously, and he got credit. So maybe that really gave him legitimate presence to be backed, right?
Yeah.
So Nobel Peace Prize. Awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, I'm back online with my trivia here. Okay, The explosion in the opening scene is the infamous 16th Street Baptist Church bombing, which occurred in Birmingham, Alabama on September 15th, 1963. The 4 young girls killed in the bombing were Adie Mae Collins, Denise McNair, Carol Robinson, and Cynthia Weasley. I hope I got all those names right. Cynthia.
Wesley, I think.
Wesley.
I really like how they named all 4 girls, and I thought that would be a really nice trivia point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That
Absolutely, yeah. They should be remembered for sure.
That scene set the tone for the movie. I mean, it was a serious from that.
It did. It really did, because that was kind of like the movie just went from, you know, it just went boom right in your face. You know, that you kind of got. You're right. It did set the tone. It wasn't sure where the movie was going when that happened. You were going, holy cow, you know.
Yeah. That was yep.
It's hard to look at. They didn't hold anything back.
Right off the top.
They showed you the bodies and everything.
It punches you right in the gut and shows you right immediately the injustice of what's going on. Like that's out.
It's
an outrage.
It's like it is terrorism within the states. The Civil War ended, but no, it didn't end for these nut jobs, right? They just carried on, and they would have kept carrying on.
Yeah. Martin Luther King Jr.'s estate had already licensed the film rights for his civil rights speeches to DreamWorks and Warner Brothers for yet to be produced biopic. For this film, Ava DuVernay wrote new variations of those speeches. So the speeches he said were fictional. They were fictional speeches
because they're copyrighted and they didn't own the rights to them.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Well, they were good speeches, and one of the things that I had to marvel about, and I thought the movie captured very well, is how well spoken Martin Luther King was, and that is key to his success. You know, the fact that he could really be put in tight circumstances and just present and speak well to his cause. And articulate it in a way that really was undisputable. You know, that was a gift. You know, and
absolutely.
And I think, you know, maybe it comes from being a preacher, but either way, it was extremely effective. And he worked with he could, you know, he talked around the president. That was depicted in there. Now I don't know how true that is to history, but I would imagine it would have had to have been. That to convince the president of something. Where the president really has nothing he can say. You know, this is a refined politician. That takes something. You know, that takes a well-spoken, well-read individual that can do that. And I think that the movie depicted that well about him. And
he is depicted, and I'm amazing, like just amazing speech. He definitely was a preacher. You could tell he knew how to work a crowd. He knew how to. Yeah. Pace this speech and, you know, engage and really speak truth about the situation in a hot button moments, like that funeral over the poor guy that got shot in that restaurant, which you know, talk about shocking. You had the bombing thing at the beginning. You had the shocking moment with the police officer just killing a guy in front of people. Like that's America at the time, right?
Yeah, crazy.
Like, just yeah. I mean, could you imagine if he lived? Do you think maybe he might have run for president? Maybe it was too soon for a black president, but could you imagine a leadership of that guy's caliber?
Well, yeah, it's true. But what I loved about this is that we saw all the people in the movie that surrounded him. At the end of the movie, they show them, and they did get powerful political positions, many of them. And I think, isn't even one of them still?
One of them just passed away.
One of them,
I believe he was a senator.
Yeah, like they showed the young kid. There was the 2 kids that were part of the movement in Selma.
Okay. Yeah,
and the kid that was most closest to Martin Luther there. I believe he still held a position to this day in some political forum. You know, so
I don't know, but someone has passed away that was at the time period and walked across the bridge, did the protest. So
I mean, maybe not, but maybe not. Maybe at the time of the film or something. But either way, it showed us. It showed us that what a difference Martin Luther King's work did. You know, for all the people that surrounded him, and that you know,
absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a lot to dig into, man. You go on Wikipedia. Hopefully, the facts are straight. Dig into it, man. The history is there, and this movie really draws you. Like movies like this make you want to know more, and really engage you into the history of things. Even though we're Canadians, I mean, it's so important.
Even though we're not religious.
Yeah. Okay. Right. All of it. Like, but it's so important. That was like a kind of a last stand for white power, because if they would have shut that down, who knows? Like the movements and the domino effect of it all. Like you shut that down, but they did shut that down with killing Martin Luther. I mean, I don't know the history of who killed him and it all. I know that he died he was going to be presenting about something in Washington, D.C., and he was killed at a hotel or something, assassinated by gunfire. So just, it's so awful. I mean, what ifs, what could have been?
Yeah. It's well, they did a lot of work back then, and I think maybe there's a lot more work to do. You know, like imagine Star Trek universe where there's like the Federation.
Could we get to the Star Trek?
Can we get to that level of optimism?
Steve, you know what? That was always, when I was a kid and after watching Star Trek, I was always thinking, you know, if we could just be like Star Trek. They seem to have it figured out.
They all get along, right?
There's interracial couples and aliens, you know.
I can't remember if it was Gandhi or someone said that if one of us is not free, all of us are not free. To me, as far as you look at the planet Earth as a whole, I think that statement is the most powerful statement of all. And that's when we raise up the bottom of our planet and we start bringing up the people that are most compromised on this planet, and we try to, that's how we improve everybody, our lives, everybody's, and so, you know, this movie kind of reminded me of that, and I think that's our work. You know, we're still obviously got a long ways to go. There's people that are suffering and starving and still, and that's just wrong, you know, and so.
Wow. This movie,
civil rights.
This movie depicted an era from like over 50 years ago, or sorry, my math is a little off, 50 years. I mean, we still have a lot of shit that we can't figure out.
Yeah.
But watching movies like this, getting educated, don't be an ignorant motherfucker. That's like, that's the problem.
Truer words have never been spoken, Phil. Thank you.
Just actually check the facts, man. Like, try to
get educated, fuckers.
Get educated. And watch a movie like this instead of watching some piece of shit Fast and Furious. Sorry.
Yeah, well, they didn't do anything wrong.
I shouldn't pick on any movie. Just watch some higher level movies with some.
Watch Fast and Furious, but also watch Selma.
Balance your diet.
Yeah, balance it out.
Balance
yin and yang.
You gotta eat.
Maybe we should wrap this up.
Yeah, we just lost that whole segment.
We started talking about Star Trek and Fast and Furious. Anyway, let's just. Selma was a beautiful movie. Thank you, John.
Beautiful movie. Yeah. Well, tragic beauty in human rights.
Yeah.
Movement. I don't.
That was Selma. We are primarily critical. You are awesome. And next week, Monday at noon, we're covering A Quiet Place Part 2.
Yes.
Phil, you picked this.
Well, you know, this was my effort to get away from the heavy movies and heavy topics that we've covered. We seem to have gone, which, you know what? All these movies that we've covered are important things. They're have things to say that are important. But every so often, you just want to have some fun and watch a horror movie about aliens and stuff.
This delivers.
I can't wait to talk about it. I can't wait to talk about it. Check out primarythecritical.com. We actually have a store along with all our old podcasts, so you can spend all day there. And I would, if I was you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Cry.